For the past 2 weeks, Gauteng has accounted for the majority of cases in daily COVID-19 statistics. With an average of 10,000 cases every 24 hours, South Africa's economic hub has become the epicenter of the COVID-19 third wave. As President Cyril Ramaphosa is set to deliver an update on government's response to the pandemic tonight, experts are warning that the province could be moved to a stricter lockdown. But what exactly will this mean for the economy in the province? To chat more about this, we speak to CEO at Gauteng Enterprise Propeller, Saki Zamxaka. Saki, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us on the Weekend Report. We're all waiting anxiously for our anticipated family meeting this evening. What do you imagine to be the impact on whatever the president will be speaking to, especially as experts have warned that a harder lockdown will need to be imposed? But they've also spoken about how moving to level 5 would be too late at this point.
Good morning, Paul. Thank you. I think, as we talk about the possible impact of this, I'll make a very simple example. As we speak now, there's probably a restaurant owner, a liquor store owner, a worker at a restaurant, a worker at a liquor store, or a worker in an events company who doesn't know whether they'll go to work tomorrow or not. So the effects are already there, and that's why you find the business community being the one screaming the most and saying, we don't need this. But again, I think the reality of it is that whether there is an increase in lockdown levels or not, it is going to impact on the economy, because as people fear going out, they will make decisions whether they go to schools, they go to work, they go to restaurants, they travel or not. So the impact is going to be there either way or not, either way. And I think what really is going to get us out of this is when we have an effective vaccine that's been administered and life can resume as we've seen it at least in the past 2-3 years.
Gauteng officials haven't really specified in the lead-up and the build-up towards President Cyril Ramaphosa's address this evening on whether tighter measures should be introduced in Gauteng, being the epicenter, seeing the highest number of daily infections, or on the country in its entirety. When we look at the impact of a move on the economy, what do you anticipate, especially as we are still trying to recover from the impact of a hard lockdown?
I think naturally, as everyone always says, the virus moves through people. So we can, I think, expect that, big gatherings, there will be some restrictions on them. Schools are another risky point. So I would expect that there would be some consideration there. So whether we move to level 4 or remain in level 3, we can expect that, in terms of movements of people and maybe curfew, there may be some revisions. Whether it should be Gauteng or not, yes, Gauteng naturally has the biggest population in the country, has the bigger economy, so there's more activity, but the rest of the country is catching up. So the point is, whether do you wait until they reach the peak for you to take an action, or do you prevent the peak from happening? And again, when we talk about lives, even people's livelihoods is a real thing. So for government, yes, they've got to protect both. They've got to protect livelihoods and lives of people, because if we had deaths which are out of hand, that's still going to impact on the economy. So really, I think where a lot of the expectation is, what is going to bring us to some level of normality. And as we're seeing in the West, some of the bigger economies have vaccinated most of their populations, and things are resuming again. So we hope to get to that point as well, and hopefully, more vaccines are going to be released around the world to get us to, to operate. And that's really what we need. Lockdowns, yes, are effective in capping the spread, but the effects are just too much. And I think a lockdown level 5 would be completely irresponsible.
You say the effects are just too much, and we know that in some of the discussions, it's believed the proposal to this evening will include banning all gatherings and alcohol sales, because we know, just gathering from what was said at the Gauteng Command Council briefing, that perhaps there needs to be something harsher when it comes to alcohol. We've already seen a bit of a pinch there, but looking at the impact on alcohol sales and what that essentially meant for the economy and that sector, which suffered quite severely.
Well, again, I mean, I know people always trivialize alcohol. It has a big impact on restaurants and how they operate. When you talk to some of the restaurant owners, they get very anxious about these changes and what they're going to mean for their own business. So that becomes a real thing. But there's also logistics behind all of these sectors. So there's a truck on the road delivering something somewhere as we speak. What's going to happen to that delivery? So I think while the measures are necessary and important to curb everything else, by this time we should be having a predictable way on how we manage this. Yes, if you give people too much notice, they may do certain things to get around the regulations, but we also need a sense of predictability, because while people may applaud immediate effect, if you are in logistics, those things can have dire consequences on you, on whether, one, you are complying because you already have a truck on the road that needs to deliver and go somewhere. So I think a sense of predictability is what is going to be needed in the economy as we deal with this. I think the start-stop is what is creating some troubles. There are some benefits we've seen. There are new sectors that are growing. And the economy seems to be rebounding a little bit better than everybody had anticipated. But if we bring too much uncertainty again, where at these start stops, it's going to hurt the economy again.
You speak about sectors that are growing, and we know that the impact of COVID-19 was quite severe. It was really cruel on the hospitality sector. What growth were we looking at as a bit of a glimmer and some sort of hope?
Well, very typically the tech sector has done well. If you look at the telecoms companies, they've done well. There's been a lot of fiber that's being laid in various parts, which didn't have as much fiber. Again, there you're talking a lot of small businesses that have a buggy and they're literally digging up the fiber, up to tech and digitizing companies. So there's been a little bit of growth in that. But also even in hospitality, there's been a shift, which again is a shift I think has been necessary over time, where there's been a bit of boom in domestic tourism. So the money that would have gotten on a plane and been spent elsewhere, people are starting to spend it locally. And we're seeing a lot more even of the establishments revising their prices. Those who were sort of dollar-based in their outlook are now starting to price for the local economy. So that's gotten people traveling locally a little bit more. Our game farms, for example, some of our local hotels, and a little bit of hospitality, but also even shopping, where people are now shopping a little bit more locally than they did abroad. So we're seeing a little bit of money spent more locally than would have been at this time. And I think those are some of the things that contributed to a little bit of the rebound. So that momentum needed to be kept a little bit. And some of the countries who are reaching, 70 plus levels of vaccinations, travel is happening. We were seeing some flights coming back to South Africa, an announcement of Emirates, British Airways, and a lot of countries in the continent already were traveling into South Africa. So those were positive signs of, an economy that's going to start to pick up.
As CEO of the Gauteng Enterprise Propeller, looking at the manner in which business has shifted because of the hard effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown, what have you noted in terms of patterns and trends when it comes to startups and perhaps also businesses that took quite a knock but are already accelerating? What sort of demands and patterns have you noted in that space?
Well, the big one, is working capital. Some of the businesses which, are directly affected by lockdown, where there's a bit of start-stop. During the times where they're not earning income, they still need to pay for their overheads. So some of those businesses need a little bit of runway for them to sustain themselves. But there are some businesses which need expansion capital on, okay, there's a lot happening at once, give us working capital either to expand our business, or we need capital injection to buy more machinery and equipment. But there's also opportunities for acquisitions that are coming up. Certain assets have had to be repriced. Some businesses are under pressure, and some of the owners are looking at shareholders coming into their business. So I think there's a big opportunity as well to bring in some new players and transformation in the market. So a bit of mergers and acquisitions are going to increase, and entities like ours should finance those who have the potential to bounce back when the economy reopens, but also where there are some of these potential acquisitions, that's what we also need to look at. And there's a bit of that already happening in the market.
Very well. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for joining us. We're going to have to leave it there.